From the shadows where the whispers grow, through the night where the warriors flow, feel the power in the tales untold. Lord Ninja Choke takes a strong hold.
Hello everyone, and welcome to a very special episode 15 of the Lord Ninja Choke MMA Picks podcast, in which we'll be breaking down UFC 319 taking place in Saturday in Chicago, headlined by Dricus Du Plessis and Khamzat Chimaev. The immovable object versus the unstoppable force in the most hotly anticipated fight of the year. Today we're mixing up the format a little bit with a special guest. Joining us for the first time on the show, Finz Chats MMA, an experienced MMA capper who has his own channel with over 1,000 subscribers. He's here to help us break apart the main event, and in particular, we'll also be hanging around for the other fights we've selected. So today we've got 4 hosts spanning 4 time zones. I'm Dom, I'm in the west coast of the US, Finn's on the east coast of the US, we've got Will in the UK, and Josh in Australia. So without any further ado, we're going to recap last week. So we had a bit of an off night. We got 1 out of 3 of our picks correct. I picked Hernandez in the main event. Will was on Angela Hill as an underdog, and Josh was on Christian Rodriguez, who unfortunately lost to Andre Fili in a decision. I'm going to hand over to Will now.
Yeah, the card itself wasn't really a great one for me. As we just mentioned, the Angela Hill play was kind of the cornerstone of my slate. I always find being able to measure the size of 2 fighters and how they're going to look inside the cage the hardest thing to do when analyzing fights. And in both the Steve Erceg instance and the Angela Hill instance, I could tell within a minute of the fight that my bets were not going to look very good. And yeah, it just wasn't a great read by me. I fucked it up in that regard, to be perfectly honest. Minus 3.66 units on the night. It's not the worst result I've ever had. Like, you know, if my main bet's not going to win, you know, you can't really expect a whole lot. The picks were great, but I don't really pride myself on those. The only real good thing about it is that I have Jocelyn Edwards in a parlay with Carlos Prates, and that's obviously moving on to this week. So set myself up in a good way. But yeah, definitely not the best work I've ever done.
Yeah, so this is my slate, and like Will, I was also on Angela Hill. She was like an important part of the slate, but luckily the other important part of the slate was the main event to go long. So I had fight to start round 3. I had over 3.5 rounds. I had Delidze winning in 4-5 or by decision. So it really was very lucky to be positive on this card, because it seemed like at the end of round 2 the fight was over and it was going to be a big bust for me. But yeah, it was very lucky. Came through with a green light. That's always good. I'm going to hand over to Josh.
Oh boy, look at all that red. Picks went well. That's all I can really say. I mean, like my parlay missed by a mile, my alt bets missed by a mile, my locks hit somewhat, and yeah, I guess my prediction accuracy for this year is a bit up now. But other than that, I can't really say much else.
And our guest, Finz.
Yeah, so not the best night, not the worst night. We went 8-4 on picks. I as well fell for the Angela Hill trap. You know, all the measurables and all the stats would make you think Angela Hill would win. You know, volume striker going against someone that, you know, barely put up 30 strikes in her last 2 fights, and that has, you know, pretty bad jiu-jitsu. Couldn't submit. Marina Rodriguez was in full mount, had the reps stand them up, but it turns out that age sometimes is a huge factor, and you know, the quickness of Yasmin was just too much. The power coming back was just too much. So should have seen that coming. Gilbert Urbina, you know, took a long shot dog. I thought after a year plus off, he would have a, you know, new wrinkles to his game. Maybe try to take down Medic. He actually knocked him down in the first like 10 seconds. So I thought I was actually going to cash, and then he just gets brutally KO'd. So yeah, that's usually how it goes with my bets. Cody Brundage, I thought won the fight. Not going to go into that one. That's just a bad bet. You shouldn't bet Cody Brundage at favorite odds. We did have some good bets. Hernandez, I had his money line on the over 2.5, similar to Dom. Leroy Duncan inside the Leroy Duncan KO. Easy cash. Jocelyn Edwards inside the distance. I was tempted to do the sub, but I thought maybe she could get the KO. She did get a KO her last fight. That cashed. So overall, down a half unit. Not the worst. But looking forward to this week trying to make another profit.
And on that note, let's take a look at the card for UFC 319 in Chicago it is quite a tasty card here. So let's go to you first, Finz. What do you think? What do you make of the card in its totality?
I'm actually very excited for this card. I am going to the event. The card top to bottom, it's not the most high leverage matchups, not the biggest spots, but there is a lot to like. I mean, yeah, Aaron Pico making his UFC debut. We're finding out if Bellator is truly fraudulent or if Pico's gonna get a W. Murphy is also undefeated, so that's cool. Prates versus Neal, I feel like someone's getting KO'd or it's gonna be a boring decision. Cannonier Page, I think someone's getting KO'd or it's gonna be a boring decision. Tim Elliott Asakura, I think someone's getting KO'd or it's going to be a boring decision. I can say that for King Green and Ferreira as well. But obviously the main event is the thing I'm looking forward to the most. That is, it's Khamzat's time. Finally ready. The whole reason I made my YouTube channel was because of Khamzat. I'm a big fan of his, and I'm looking forward to him getting the W. I don't care if I'm a jinx. I just think it's inevitable at this point.
Yeah, so no sense of anticipation for your breakdown coming up then. Yeah, let's see what the other guys think. Will, what do you think about this card?
Honestly, now that you've said it about like all the fights on the main card could also be quite boring. It's completely changed the way I view it. Like I fully was agreeing. Like I think it's great that there are so many talking points across the card. Like every fight has something intriguing about it in terms of like prospects or just fun stylistic matchups. But yeah, there is a small chance it could be pretty boring across the board. I mean, the Cannonier Page fight specifically is one I'll talk about in more detail. But yeah, I am anticipating a bit of a staring match in that one. But yeah, I am excited for it. It's always nice when top to bottom you have something that you can sort of latch onto and see a narrative in a fight that makes it interesting for you, especially for me as a UK guy, because this starts at 11 p.m. So, I got to keep entertained and intrigued in some way, because otherwise I'm just going to fall asleep.
And Josh, what are your thoughts?
I got none. I mean, you guys pretty much covered it all, really. If I was to yap about the whole card, you guys would be here for about 20 minutes, and that's too much. So, yeah, I got no real thoughts about this one.
Okay, with that, we're going to show you the fights here that we're going to break down. We're going to break down the main event, the co-main, as Will said, Cannonier versus Page. We've got GM3, and then we've got Barboza versus Klose. So let's get into it. Firstly, the main event. Yeah, the immovable object versus the unstoppable force. This has been probably, it's going to be the biggest fight of the year. I'm really looking forward to it. Of course, I've got a vested interest in it, as has Finz, and maybe Josh, you can high level give us some thoughts on this matchup.
DDP is currently undefeated, and obviously I'm going to be pretty biased with DDP because I have backed him for all of his fights, apart from the Whittaker fight. The Whittaker fight was really the only one that I kind of felt weird about, because Whittaker's my guy, right? But anyway, he has fought and defeated most of the relevant competition in the UFC in the division. So I mean, you got Strickland, you got Whittaker, you got Izzy. Those three are really the only decent fighters on this whole roster at the moment. His unique style is both his greatest friend and his worst enemy, and what I mean by that is, in regards to the whole greatest friend bit, I do believe that none of his opponents, not even Chimaev, not even if he had a full year of prep time to get ready for DDP, can get ready for DDP, because DDP's style is non-existent, right? He kind of rolls the dice when he throws shit. There are so many moments when he fights where I don't think DDP knows what he's gonna do, because he just does it anyway. It's like watching a ferret fight. They're chaotic and messy and so fun to watch, really. The saving grace for his rather chaotic style is that he can continuously throw out high output for 5 minutes or 5 rounds and still look reasonably good, right? I mean, we've seen this with all of his championship fights. He can throw like a truck for 4 rounds, and just when you think he's going to slow down, he just keeps going. It's so... What's he on? I mean, I know I'm partially kidding there, but come on, there must be something in like the Pretoria water, right? Like that guy's crazy. His best weapons would be his hands and his kicks and whatever the hell kickboxers use, you know. But ultimately, his best weapon overall is just the randomness of his attacks. Chimaev is someone who is quite susceptible to being struck. We saw this when he fought Gilbert Burns, and you know, we saw that his chin was in the air. He was like flailing his arms at Gilbert Burns, and it was just a really bad look for Chimaev. But when it comes to DDP and his striking style against Chimaev, I do believe that if Chimaev doesn't really wrestle, which he will, I mean, fuck, it's Chimaev. He's gonna wrestle. The first 5 seconds, bam, takedown. But if he doesn't, he's gonna be bruised and battered within the first couple of minutes, because DDP is going to be that kind of guy to test that striking against Chimaev, right? Now, the bad things about DDP is that he is a rather tall stance fighter. We often see him in a rather traditional Muay Thai stance where the feet are close together. There's no real stance incentive to spread those legs, and so there's no takedown defense from that stance. So ultimately, I do believe that that's a downside, because obviously Chimaev's going to go for the crutch and not bite on it, but you know, take DDP down. So anyone with a long, lengthy stance would be less susceptible to that kind of takedown, whereas DDP and his close-legged or close feet stance is susceptible. DDP does headhunt a lot. He does go for the head at like 60% of the time, which is pretty dangerous for a wrestler, because the wrestler obviously is not going to get struck in the head. He's going to level change and, you know, all that shit. The only concern I have for DDP at the moment is that his takedown defense is not really tested, right? We saw Whitaker take him down, but there was only a very short amount of time on the ground, so I don't really count too much towards that. I believe in the first 2 rounds, Chimaev, first round, Chimaev is going to obviously control DDP to a point. But then, as is Chimaev typically does, his performance does drop off by a bit. So I kind of trust DDP to adjust to those takedowns in the later rounds, but only after the corner tells him what to do, right? Now, before I sound too biased, because I am very biased, Chimaev does fight at a very high pace in the first round, and he can get a submission in the first round, as we saw when he pretty much dismantled my boy Whitaker. That was a heartbreaking moment. So I do believe that the first round is going to be mostly Chimaev just being a wrecking ball against DDP. But that's where my praise for him stops, because outside of that, he's nothing special. I know that the whole UFC world hypes him up to be some world beater, but he has beaten no one in a really dominant way, apart from Whitaker. Whitaker's the only one that can really, that he really defeated in a really crazy way. But anyone else, no. He is absolutely overhyped, and I'm sticking by that until I die, by a Chimaev fan. I don't know. But yeah, that's my breakdown. I don't know if we're doing picks or whatever here, but if we are, I'll be going with DDP, obviously, and yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, it seems like we're going for the old 1-2-1. So let's go to the other side of the argument, and that's why we've got Finz here.
All right, I'll put it like this. You know how like kids look up to like superheroes? I would say that's how I look up to Khamzat. It's more like he's 14-0. he's been through wars at this point, man. He's been through battles, you know. Like Gilbert Burns put him to the brink. I was there live. I saw that. That was crazy. Yeah, Kamaru Usman put him to the brink. Basically 10-8'd him in the first round, though. I mean, Robert Whitaker, he took down, submitted in less than like 4 minutes. DDP, it took a couple rounds to KO him, you know. I think at this point, Dricus and Khamzat both have plot armor. You know, at this point, you got to start looking at fights from a different level because obviously it makes no sense that DDP has gotten this far. It makes zero sense. His skill, the way he fights, it just doesn't make sense to win. It's similar to Rainer de Ritter, similar to Chris Duncan. It's just like the way I put it here on the text. It's like a goofy goober, bro. It's just, let's just put that out of the way. It doesn't make sense that DDP is here at this point. Khamzat, is DDP's goofiness really enough to beat Khamzat? I just can't see it. I think Khamzat has more plot armor than DDP. That's how I put it on the text. And this might not be the best breakdown, but I just think it's Khamzat round 1 sub. I mean, even Slayer was saying, like, yes, Khamzat's going to take him down in round 1. But I think he submits him when he takes him down. That's the thing. It's like I don't see another world where it doesn't happen. Dricus, he has good grappling, but I just think Khamzat's going to be too much too early. His cardio is good. Sure, he got that nose surgery. It was just yes. I mean, Usman and Burns were able to thwart it, but I think Dricus's wrestling and grappling is actually worse than Usman's. I think it's comparable to the Burns that he fought in 2021. I think it's comparable. Like, is Dricus anti-wrestling that good? 50% takedown defense? I mean, Brad Tavares got him in a horrible spot early in the fight. Khamzat's there. He finishes. It's just too much, man. It's just I think Khamzat's minus 200 for a reason. All right, that's how I'm going to end it off.
Okay. No, they're all good points, and it would be remiss of me not to mention that Khamzat is definitely live at the start of this fight. I do think that he is going to shoot within the first 30 seconds of the fight. He does that pretty much in every fight. I don't think there's been a fight he's been in the UFC that he hasn't shot in the first 30 seconds, except for starching GM3 within 30 seconds. So apart from that, I fully expect this to be a very tough first and possibly second round of the fight for DDP. And really, I put DDP's record on here just because I was, you know, like Finz was saying, I couldn't believe this guy was winning. Like his you know, from a traditional standpoint, his technique looks awful until you get used to seeing how he operates, and he is effective. So I think, you know, the Giles fight, I think I just took Giles because Du Plessis was so, you know, new to the UFC. I'm not sure if I bet on the Tavares fight, but I definitely bet on Till. So that was a bad bet. I think I probably skipped Brunson. And then I think probably around, I think it could have been the Whitaker fight, I started backing Dricus. I think I took him against Whitaker, but only because he was such massive plus odds. And I backed Strickland. Go ahead, Finz.
Yeah, I would like to say I did not take Dricus in any of these fights.
Okay, that's
I'm
fine.
looking at my topology pick history,
Yeah.
and yeah, somehow, some way, in every single fight I picked against Dricus. But yeah, that's just throwing it out there.
That's good to know. Yeah, like I was similar. I was picking against him pretty much the whole way, and I even picked against him in the first Strickland fight. So I think that was my biggest bet. Biggest bet that I've lost was betting on Sean Strickland in the first one, which I do feel a bit, you know, like I felt like it was a close one. I don't feel it was a robbery. But I bet on Dricus to beat Adesanya, so he's kind of like turned me around really. And you can see here, like, his weaknesses, I believe, are, you know, his awkward style is a pro and it's a con. It's a con because it looks like it uses a lot of energy, and certainly before he had his nose fixed and pre 2023 when USADA was in play, he seemed to be gassing out a lot. He's not really had a lot of grappling opponents, to be honest. So the one thing I want to say about the takedown defense is, I was just checking this out before I came on, he's only 4 people have tried to take him down. So two out of 4 attempts have been successful. Like Josh said, I don't think we've really seen much of his grappling. On the plus side, you know, I think DDP's main strengths are that he is well-rounded. So he does have he's usually the person taking the other fighter down and submitting them. He has a lot of submissions on his record. We know this guy can grapple. It's just that he hasn't had to do it in the UFC. Now, Chimaev is on another level. I'm not going to argue that Chimaev isn't as good. He is much better than Dricus at grappling for sure. So it's going to be tough. I think mentality is where this fight is going to be won or lost. You know, it's always the inches at the top level. It's going to be who has the kill or be killed mentality more. Both these guys definitely have very strong mentality, but I think Dricus, just for me, he just edges it. I've just seen recently in the Chimaev interviews, you know, he's just seems to have changed. He's not the smash everyone type of guy he was when he shot onto the scene in COVID. I'm not saying that means he's not a killer in the cage. I'm just saying these tiny inches can make a difference. There's a whole long list here, and I'm not going to go into all of them, but the main thing I want to mention was the takedown defense, and then the second thing was the size thing. So DDP's fought pretty much his whole career at middleweight. There are 3 fights actually he fought at welterweight, but he's fought majority of his fights at middleweight. I mean, Khamzat's not really fought at middleweight. He's beaten Kamaru Usman, who's a welterweight who came in at short notice, and he beat GM3. I think that maybe there was Reese McKee, but I mean, he's a welterweight, so he's coming up a weight class here. So I'm pretty confident DDP will be Khamzat's biggest and strongest opponent to date. And there is a video of DDP grappling when he was off camp in one of these submission grappling videos. It was like from 2022. And, you know, you have to go against a team of other grapplers, and you take turns. It's like a survival grappling. And DDP was the first person up on his team, and he submitted five black belts in the other team. It's online. You can find that video. So I think he's got some BJJ and grappling chops, but he just needs to survive. He needs to survive Chimaev. That's what he needs to do, I think. And I think that his experience, right? He's got a lot more fights and more 5-round fights. Since the start of 2024, he's fought 5 rounds 3 times, twice against Strickland and once against Adesanya. And in that time, Khamzat has beaten Whittaker, which was like a fight that lasted 3 minutes. So in terms of activity, there's no contest here. DDP's been more active in the last 2 years. I think that is going to be an important factor if the fight does go long. Of course, if it finishes in round 1, it doesn't matter. So I think Khamzat will have to really, really go for the finish early. That's what I think he'll have to do. And I think the Kamaru fight, just to go back on that one, Kamaru, like I said, he came off the couch with 10 days notice, and he pushed Khamzat right to the limit. And that speaks to what Josh was saying about, you know, this guy, he might not be as good as everyone thinks he is. Burns fought at lightweight, you know, and had an absolute war with him. It was wobbling him on the feet. I mean, Dricus is a big middleweight. He's barely making welterweight. Of course, he's never going to make lightweight. So, you know, when you think about the takedown defense that in the UFC being 50%, it's only 4 attempts. So it's only 2 out of 4. So I think it's just it doesn't hold a lot of water for me. So that summarizes it. I'm on DDP, and we'll get to the bets later. And I think now we are going to move on. Unless, Finz, you want to have any final rebuttals in this debate.
Like, as you're talking, I'm just running through all the outcomes and scenarios that could happen in this fight. And I think the worst thing, I was just thinking worst case scenario, what is the worst thing that could happen? It's not necessarily a Dricus win. I think a Dricus sub late. Like a Fluffy Hernandez style, round, because I was looking at Adesanya round 4 sub 338. I was like, imagine it gets to that point and Khamzat's so gassed he gets submitted. Oh, that would be disgusting. I don't even know why I just manifested that by speaking that. Yeah, that's all I got.
Well, we'll see what happens on Saturday, and yeah, we appreciate you giving the case on the other side, because otherwise it'd be a pretty biased breakdown in favor of DDP. So yeah, much appreciated for you doing that. Yeah, this is a fight that I'm going to quickly talk about. I'm not going to go into any great amount of detail because Aaron Pico is new to the UFC. Lerone Murphy is a stalwart of the UFC. He's been in the featherweight division a long time. He's 16-0 in his career. He's undefeated, of course. And so really what I wanted to do is just focus on Pico, because that was a person that I'm not very familiar with. I'm really a big fan of the UFC. I don't watch a ton of other organizations, so I had to go back and find some of the fights to watch. I will actually speak about Murphy a little bit, because this is going to be a clash of styles. Pico is a grappler, a wrestler. And Murphy is not. He's a striker. So if you look at tape on Murphy's grappling, it's a bit iffy. So if you watch the tape against Ige, he made some obvious errors and Ige took him down and controlled him. But Murphy does get up often. He's very athletic. So even though he's not a great grappler, not a great wrestler, he just uses his super strength to basically stand up. So he uses athleticism. On the flip side, Pico is much better at wrestling, in my opinion, than he is striking. He doesn't throw any kicks. I don't think he wants to strike. He's always shooting very early and often in fights, and that allows him basically to just keep on top of his opponents. He's dogging them and getting them tired. But the problem is that the opponents that Pico's fighting are absolutely awful. He's been crushing cans in Bellator. These guys, they don't look like they're giving him any challenge whatsoever. They don't have very good records, and none of them have beaten anyone of note. So it's very hard to gauge where Pico is at, in terms of coming into the UFC and facing one of the most elite featherweights the UFC has to offer. Obviously the track record of Bellator fighters coming to the UFC is pretty poor, but I think Pico's probably the best of the bunch. He's definitely going to pose problems to Murphy due to his path to victory. I've already mentioned that Pico doesn't kick well. He doesn't like to fight at range. I think the thing is Murphy's going to have to be basically running away a lot of this fight. That doesn't look good to the judges, but if he does that, he'll get the space to implement his own kicks, and he doesn't want to be staying in the pocket too long. He doesn't want to get taken down and expend energy that way. I think this is quite a hard fight to call because both of these guys look like they're extreme athletes. Like out of the UFC roster, these two guys are going to test very highly in terms of strength, stamina, explosivity. I think they're probably like top 5% in terms of their athleticism. So I think it's highly volatile for that reason. But I think I'm going to lean Murphy here. It's the experience gap, the fact that he's been fighting for so long in the featherweight division. I think we have to say he should be the favorite. I don't think it's free, as some people are saying, but I think really it's quite perplexing that to see Murphy as an underdog. So I'm gonna pick him with low confidence, and I will go to Will first. What's your thoughts on this fight?
Honestly, I only really taped one side of it, and that was the Murphy side, because my kind of philosophy when researching fights is that you have to have the full context, and to have the full context, you need to know enough about the opponents. So when I watched Lerone Murphy versus Dan Ige, I know Dan Ige. I know who he's beaten. I've seen him fight. I know his strengths. I know his weaknesses. So when I saw how Lerone Murphy handled that and how he performed in that fight, I was able to contextualize whether or not that should impress me. I'm like yourself, Dom. I'm also not somebody who watches Bellator. It's kind of impossible to do that in the UK just because their fights are always so late and they try their hardest never to promote the show. And because of that, I don't know any of the guys he's fought. His last win was against Henry Corrales. That could be the next John Jones, or that could be the next Parker Porter, as far as I'm concerned. And so for that reason, if I was to watch tape on Aaron Pico, I would be analyzing his skills and what he does well, but I have no idea of how well that's translating versus a caliber that I can't account for. So a little bit of a pointless rant here when I don't really have too much to say on the fight. But I think it's kind of like a little nugget of information of something to consider if you are somebody who does tape. But in terms of the actual fight, Murphy he's a little bit flawed himself, Like I think as a striker and as an intense minute winner, he is really good, and that Dan Ige fight really did show that. He made those moments on the feet count, but he also got taken down pretty consistently whenever Dan Ige wanted to take the fight to the floor, and that is immediately concerning going up against somebody who is being touted as a very promising high level wrestler. And whilst Murphy did have the answers in terms of the get-ups, they weren't the quickest. There are some guys who, as soon as you take them down, they're immediately scooting, trying to get to the fence. They're immediately actively working to get back to their feet. Lerone Murphy was a lot more methodical with it. He took his time. He tried to find his escape, tried to sort of force the scramble and burst up when the moment presented itself. And whilst that was really good, if Pico has better top control than Dan Ige, which obviously I don't know, I could see him rounds slipping away from him, because he was giving away 2 minutes of top control time every time he was floored. And if that stretches just a little bit, suddenly you're in a situation where he's got a bit of an uphill battle. He's got to make those moments on the feet count. So I do think this is a very similar sort of like mission statement for Lerone Murphy as it was against Dan Ige, but he looked good there. I can't really criticize him too much aside from what I've just said. But to me, looking at it from a betting perspective, the plus 125 or whatever it is now, it doesn't quite make sense to me. It's not something I'm going to be betting myself just because, as I said, I haven't done my due diligence. But like experience, UFC level versus an Aaron Pico that has had a lot of time off, it just doesn't really make sense. As you say, the level of competition looks to be pretty like obvious as well. I feel like the odds should just be the other way around, and that they should be being cautious about how much favoritism to give Lerone Murphy, not how much favoritism to give Pico. So yeah, it's a bit confusing from a betting perspective, but I guess we'll just see what happens and see what Pico's really made of.
Finz or Josh, do you have any further thoughts? Anything you want to add?
I do have thoughts, but I'll give it to Finz first, and then I'll take the last bit.
No, yeah, I don't really have much thoughts in this fight. I didn't do my due diligence as well as swipe. But I will say I will not be trusting a Bellator merchant. I will be going with Lerone Murphy as well. Even if I do my due diligence, I mean, I just kind of did while he was speaking, and I was looking at, Aaron Pico's Tapology. I mean, it's nothing special, He also has that shoulder injury, so I feel like once you have one of those, it's kind of hard to not have that repeated. So that could easily happen in this fight. He's gotten brutally KO'd, and he got, all 4 of his losses are by finish. 3 KO losses and a submission loss. So, I mean, he's only won 2 decisions. So it seems like a finish or bust for Pico. And Lerone Murphy is pretty durable. So I think it's a pretty good reason to take him as well.
Yeah, I feel like I'm the only one here that kind of watched tape on Pico, and that's no offense to you guys, but geez, I'm kind of carrying Pico here. Pico is a bit of a brawl and mauler. He basically likes to throw a lot of output before it goes for takedowns, and that output can come from boxing or from clinch strikes or whatever. Anything that can lead to a transition to the ground, he uses. He does have a Golden Gloves boxing background, although that was like years ago and all that stuff, right? But still, that boxing experience does shine when he fights. Like when people say that Pico is mostly a wrestler, that's fine, that's whatever. But I feel like they're really, really ignoring the main parts of Pico that really makes him a great prospect, and that's the boxing. I mean, the one thing that really stood out to me when I watched Pico fight was his lead hook and his lead uppercut. And anything from the left side from Pico is absolutely dangerous for Murphy, because this is a orthodox versus orthodox stance fight. So there are open sides on both fighters. But since Pico does have that lead angle to attack the flat part of Murphy, we are going to likely see that hit, because Murphy, whilst he has good boxing defense, he can sometimes duck a bit too much. He can sometimes leave his chin a bit open to the shovel uppercut angle, which is like a in between of an uppercut and the hook. So that angle is pretty much open for Murphy to eat. Now, to kind of like circle around to Pico's wrestling, he does like to wrestle. That's an obvious thing, and that's going to be Murphy's main concern, because you would think that Murphy, being a kickboxer or a Muay Thai fighter, would know how to defend strikes properly, but can he defend the takedowns properly? And that's kind of up in the air right now, because I haven't seen Pico wrestle as much as I have seen him strike, and it's really the striking that I really try to look at. The bad side about Pico, or the downside I should say, is that I refer to Pico as a bit of a glass cannon, and that's a bit of a gaming phrase, because it means basically great offense but piss poor defense, right? Like, we have seen Pico get rocked in the middle of a collision, in the middle of a brawl, and he doesn't have much of a chin. I mean, we often see these wrestlers eat shots and keep going, but this guy, he's a one-hit, I quit kind of guy, really. It's like terrible to look at. So I expect Murphy to find counters every now and then, but still that shouldn't really discount the threat from Pico, that his left hook and left uppercut are brilliant. So that's my only thoughts here. You guys covered Murphy greatly, so I figured I'd do my part in yapping about Pico.
Yeah, no, good points that you made about him. I did watch a bit of tape on Pico, and like I said, the main thing I noticed was more to do with his fact he didn't kick so much. But yeah, he does have good boxing. He's got a lot of finishes, so I'm definitely not counting him out as a threat on the feet. And with that, we've got an upvote from Finz. So it's a low confidence pick and a Finz pick. Over to you, Will.
All right, so the next fight we're looking at is Jared Cannonier versus Michael Venom Page, who I will refer to as MVP pretty much consistently throughout this breakdown. This fight stood out to me straight away just because whilst it is a striker versus striker affair, it is stylistically a very different one. And I immediately just sort of compared it to another fight that we had a few years ago when Jared Cannonier fought Israel Adesanya for the middleweight belt. I think that was in like 2020, 2021, something like that. And I think that I remember that fight being particularly boring and particularly hard to watch simply because Israel Adesanya used his elite distance management and his elite kickboxing to be able to basically nullify all of the stuff that Cannonier does well, which is high volume, heavy power, and intensity. And I immediately sort of saw comparisons to MVP. So I wanted to look into it a little bit further, but immediately I was leaning towards this being stylistically a very good fight for Michael Venom Page. So, as I say, we know Cannonier as a high volume striker. He landed nearly 250 significant strikes against Marvin Vettori a couple of years ago in an Apex main event, which ranks as the fourth most significant strikes that a fighter has landed in UFC history in a single fight. But against that style of Adesanya, he only landed 2.72 significant strikes per minute to the head and body, so excluding leg kicks, which is significantly low. And, you know, comparing that to the figures on the Vettori fight, there he landed 8.45 strikes to the head and body per minute. Obviously, that's comparing his worst to his best, but there's a real indication there that quite clearly it depends on the kind of fighter that Cannonier is going up against. If he has somebody who can manage distance like that, then they can nullify a lot of the best work that he does. Speaking of the best work that he does, we know Jared Cannonier as an Apex main eventer. I think his last 6 fights have all been Apex main events, and there's definitely nothing wrong with that. He's an entertaining guy to watch, and he does bring fights. But that's the thing. A lot of the opponents he's fought recently have been guys who are, I think it's fair to describe them as brawlers, and guys who don't have elite footwork or elite distance management. They're guys who want to hunt you down and meet you in the middle or be pushing you backwards. RoboCop, he's very plodding. He's definitely not somebody that you would credit for being the most speedy or sort of agile of fighters. Sean Strickland has zero footwork. He literally stands square and stands straight at his opponents and just blocks with a guard or like a shoulder roll. He's fine with getting hit. He gets hit very often. Marvin Vettori just blocks punches with his face, you know? So there's a quite clear kind of demonstration that this is a very different fight from Jared Cannonier and a different fight from the kind of guy that we've seen recently when he's been doing his best work. So over to MVP, as I said, there are lots of comparisons to Israel Adesanya in terms of the way that he manages distance and uses sort of straight shots that are a lot more kind of direct and of a higher volume. I mean, his stance is almost like a 90-degree angle. That's how sort of footwork based he is. It's very Wonder Boy-esque. He does leave his lead leg out there, as a lot of people who have that karate stance do, which is not ideal, I suppose. And as I quoted earlier on, Cannonier did land a fair few of those against Israel Adesanya, but people have been trying to do that to MVP his whole career, as Laura Sanko said in the fight against Shara Magomedov. And I think that he has a very good ability to just move out of the way as he sees those coming. And he evaded quite a lot of Shara's leg kicks as well, so I think that should be fine. Honestly, zooming out and looking at this fight as a whole, the only real chance I give Jared Cannonier here is in the grappling realm. And we've seen MVP get out grappled before, he's British. There's always a chance he could get out grappled. I can't say that that's not going to happen, But there's also a point of looking at the fact that this is in the bigger cage. As I said, we're very used to seeing Cannonier in the apex, but this is going to be the bigger cage, which always favors the more elusive and the more evasive fighter. And like I said, MVP is somebody that everybody wants to do this to. Like pretty much every single fighter MVP has ever fought has thought, oh, do you know what? I should try and take him down. And that doesn't exactly work very often. I know it works for Ian Gary, but I think Gary has the sort of movement and speed to be able to kind of read MVP a bit better, because it's a similar kind of style that he has with his striking. And also Cannonier, it's not in his wheelhouse. He lands an average of 0.48 takedowns per 15 minutes in his UFC career. It's not something that he naturally looks to do, and I don't think it's ever a good idea to be backing a guy based off their plan B skill set. So it's just not something that really appeals to me. Another key talking point is obviously the durability of Jared Cannonier. Now, if you look at his record, it's not something that is super prevalent, because the only time he's been finished recently was against Imavov, which for some reason people decided to kick off and say it was like the worst stoppage ever. It was an early stoppage, but Jared Cannonier was on skates, and Jared Cannonier has been on skates many, many times in the last few years. He got dropped twice by Robocop last time. He got dropped and hurt badly by Caio Bahayo really late. He got hurt by Imavov, which ended the fight. He also got hurt by Marvin Vettori in round 1. Like, who gets hurt by Marvin Vettori these days? That was probably the most eye-opening one. So, yeah, I mean, there definitely looks to be a trend that Cannonier is heading downwards in terms of his durability. He's also, over 40 now, which is something I don't like to really rest too lot of emphasis on, because that narrative seems to be changing a little bit. But it can't help, can it? So, yeah, I mean, I think I've said enough here. But at the end of the day, it's quite mad to me that with the pitch I've just made, I'm talking about MVP when he's minus 175. I genuinely think MVP should be about minus 300 here. I don't see an avenue in which Jared Cannonier has a replicatable game plan which will get him a victory at a reasonably high clip. I don't think he wins this fight 36% of the time, or whatever the number is supposed to be. So I have definitely seen the MVP side, and I'm betting him very heavy here. What does everyone else think?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I'm not going to have a long breakdown here. I think Michael Page is just a very good striker, and the only way he really is going to lose moving forward is if he gets put up against a relentless wrestler or grappler type. So the question really is, could Jared Cannonier get takedowns? I mean, I tend to say no, but he has shown an ability to do so. It's not like he doesn't have that in his game. He's been in the game for quite a while. I know Swipe said that Cannonier is 41. We're not following that narrative. I mean, Michael Page is also 38. It's not like he's a spring chicken, With age, maybe Michael Page slows down. And if he slows down on the feet, then, I mean, that's the avenue for Cannonier to win. I mean, Michael Page is also 38. I mean, if he's, the whole reason his game is good is because he's a fast, mobile striker. So if he starts slowing down with his age, I mean, Cannonier can clip him. And also, if Cannonier goes for takedowns, he can get those as well. So I am agreeing with Michael Page, but I see why the line is close, But also, the thing that also leads me to Michael Page, it's 3 rounds. I feel like 5 rounds, Cannonier has more of an opportunity to maybe catch Page or take him down a lot. But in 3 rounds, I feel like that's Michael Page's wheelhouse. He can just, stand in a distance for 15 minutes. So, yeah.
Josh, what are your thoughts?
I don't have many thoughts right now. In general, my mind's dead. But what I do want to say is that when fighting someone like Michael Page, which is something that I've never done personally, but I do think that Cannonier is going to be a bit stuck with options. Either he's going to be hesitant in his approach, and that'll make Page just stab him with jabs every now and then, just look busier, right? Or he's going to do something really stupid, and that's going to be try and penetrate that range, get into the wrestling clinch, or get into the wrestling position, or even the dirty boxing position, which is in the pocket, and just land strikes or get a takedown or whatever. But even if that does happen, MVP does have the larger octagon to just glide around and counter. So no matter what way I kind of try and picture this fight, I cannot see Cannonier being too effective. Yeah, it's just a very one-sided fight for me, really. And as Will said, minus 175, that's a bit too crazy. I mean, I reckon, or I reckon even minus 300, minus 400 would make more sense. But I mean, at those odds, that's money right there. So yeah, that's all I can really say about that one.
Yeah, I haven't looked into this fight a great deal, and as I said before, when it comes to picking favourites these days, I like to be absolutely certain my favourite is going to put a walloping on the other guy. And I think Finn's hinted at the main reason. It's just that I think Jared Cannonier can have a path to victory if he can somehow implement a grappling game plan. Like Will said, it's not going to be easy. Michael Fillon Page has been dealing with people trying to take him down his whole career. But yeah, it's just the age thing, I think. And if he needs to be taken down once, and I think Cannonier is a gorilla, the killer gorilla. He could finish MVP on the ground pretty quickly. He's a weight class up. He used to be a heavyweight, right? So he's come down 2 weight classes up against Michael Page going up a weight class. I think it is Michael Venom Page's fight to lose. So he has to make a mistake to lose it. But yeah, I think it's very possible that could happen. The confidence level is high here because Will picked 3 and Josh upvoted it. I'm on the sidelines and so is Finz. We've got 2 fights. Oh no, Finz is on the side of MVP. Apologies. And we have Will again breaking down GM3 versus Michal Oleksiejczuk.
Damn, here we go again. This is a real degenerate pick. God knows why I've chosen this fight. So I bet GM3 a couple of weeks ago at plus 230. And I was very passionate about the fact that I thought that was a nuts betting line. I just did not think that made sense at all. So we know the score here. It's pretty obvious, isn't it? GM3 is a pure grappler. If he's forced to strike, he's going to be in trouble. I understand why he is the underdog for that reason alone, because all fights start standing. But the betting line is so on one side, on the side of Michal Oleksiejczuk, that I think people are forgetting that Michal is a pure striker, and if he's forced to grapple, he's in trouble. And it's one of those. It's a hard one to say because I can't really necessarily point to stylistically like the really like finer details between it here, but like the gap in skill, as far as I'm concerned, if we saw 100 fights where they did nothing but kickbox, and then we did 100 fights where it was pure jiu-jitsu, I think Gerald Meerschaert wins more fights than Oleksiejczuk does. I think Gerald Meerschaert's striking is better than Michal Oleksiejczuk's grappling. And therefore, I think that the only reason that there is like a severe or a significant favorite in this fight is because all fights start standing. Like we start off in Michal Oleksiejczuk's office. If we started on the mat, I think Gerald Meerschaert would be the favorite. So yeah, I understand that, but the gulf of it is just way too wide, in my opinion, because this is a mad statistic. I think Michal Oleksiejczuk has been submitted more times in the UFC than Gerald Meerschaert has been KO'd in the UFC. Now I know that doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot, but like that therefore demonstrates that one guy has done a better job of protecting his weakness versus the other guy who has been like suffering it most of the time. And also, this is maybe a bit wild to say, but I genuinely think that this is easier a fight for Gerald Meerschaert than 7 of his last 8 wins. Because, like I say, we always know that Gerald Meerschaert is at a striking disadvantage. And if there's 15 minutes of striking, the guy's in trouble. Like, obviously, we know that. But I think that Gerald Meerschaert's ability to get fights to the floor is always live. And sometimes it's even live with nothing to do with him. Like, we saw that against Shabazian. He got pummeled for the first half of the fight and was knocked down to the ground, and that was when his path to victory opened up. Like, I don't think that there's anything you can do to be safe against Gerald Meerschaert unless you refuse to engage and you stand him straight back up. Also, Michal Oleksiejczuk has already had this kind of fight and already fumbled it. Back in like 2019, 2020, he fought Ovince St. Preux, who has a very similar kind of like summary of style as Gerald Meerschaert does, in that he's a vulnerable striker, not really that amazing on the feet, but his grappling is very dangerous. And Oleksiejczuk beat the piss out of him in round 1, if I remember correctly. But then just like as soon as the fight got to the mat, somehow over some weird scramble in round 2, Oleksiejczuk folded and got choked out. So I just don't think you can count Gerald Meerschaert out here. And seeing him at plus 230 immediately was like, I think this is just like close-ish to a coin flip. Because, yeah, like I said, I think Oleksiejczuk is a worse grappler than so many of the guys that Meerschaert has already beat. So this is just another fight for him. Whereas Oleksiejczuk's going to have to be careful, you know, like he does always have to be careful against it. But like specifically here, you know, he's going to have to worry about any entry that Meerschaert attempts. He's going to have to worry about not overexerting himself. The floor is literally lava for this guy in this instance. And, you know, you want to talk about a value bet. I know Meerschaert's come in a little bit. I think he's at like plus 190 now. I still think that's a really good value bet. Like I can't guarantee this one to be a winner. And I do think that Oleksiejczuk is expected to win like 51 or more % of the time. But I just don't believe that Meerschaert wins a, you know, like 25% of the fight here. Sorry, it's more like 30%. I think it's just simply not enough. He's not being given the credit that he deserves. And I'm somebody who doesn't usually back GM3. So yeah, I think it's a flyer to take on the card, really. If you want to put a Hail Mary on a dog, I think Gerald Meerschaert is one of the more appealing ones. Obviously, the KO or the inside the distance prop is another one to look at for him. But yeah, I just think the number's wrong on this one, basically. I'm sure nobody's going to agree with me, though. What do you guys think?
The floor is open.
You want to take it, Finz, or you want me to go first?
Yeah, I'll take it real quick. I don't have a long breakdown for this one. I mean, this is going to go how most Gerald Meerschaert meme fights go. I think it's going to go similar to Edmund Shabazian versus Meerschaert, where it's like, how does Shabazian not knock this guy out? And then he knocks him down like multiple times, has Gerald wobbled, but Shabazian's ground game is not that good. Michal Oleksiejczuk's ground game's not that good. I feel like there's no way Oleksiejczuk just like completely flatlines Gerald on the feet. So I think a Gerald sub on the ground once he's rocked is very, very, very live. If I'm actually going to get around to picking and betting that is a different story. I mean, Michal is with the Fighting Nerds now. Maybe they are teaching him a better game plan. Maybe he's going to do like a Steven win and knock him down like 6 times and win. Maybe he doesn't follow him to the ground this time. But yeah, those are my thoughts.
Yeah, you stole my thoughts. I got nothing else to say after that. You pretty much covered what I was going to say. So yeah, I reckon it's a very binary fight, if that's the right term for this, right? Like where GM3 is either going to submit him or Michal is going to just knock him out, and that's typically how most GM3 fights go. Because as Finn said, right, if GM3 gets knocked down, he's basically laying a trap for Oleksiejczuk to fall into the guard and get tapped out. I don't know. Like it's going to be a fun fight. I do believe GM3 has more of a chance to submit Oleksiejczuk than Oleksiejczuk has to knock out GM3. And even as I was saying that, I was doubting myself there. So I'm still going to be picking GM3 when my write-up comes out, but it's going to be one of those alt bet territories where I pick GM3 at high odds for a submission, and that's all I got really.
Yeah, I think I was actually on Shabazian in that fight. So GM3's burned me enough times, but I think weirdly I did have a very small bet on him when he beat Meerschaert. Sorry, it was Muradov. I think it was a big underdog against Muradov. Yeah, I can see the logic in picking GM3. I haven't looked into this fight in great detail. I just would point out that the sub losses that Michal has suffered were at light heavyweight. So I don't even know how this guy could have been at light heavyweight because he looks frail at middleweight, to be honest. But yeah, he must have been. That's the reason he got handled on the ground by those bigger fighters, because there was probably a bit of a size discrepancy. But yeah, he's definitely going to be, as everyone else has said, he's going to be a danger on the ground. So yeah, I can definitely see the GM3 love. And we move on to the final fight we're going to be discussing today. Edson Barboza against Drakkar Klose. Take us away, Josh.
I'll try. I mean, there's really not much to say about this one, despite me having a whole page of notes here. Barboza will obviously have a massive striking advantage. I mean, his whole career is based around his leg kicks and his kicks in general, right? I do believe that because he's going up in weight and he is fighting in 3 rounds, it'll give him more incentive and more oomph to his kicks and all that stuff. And that's going to be pretty bad for Klose, who doesn't really have great leg kick defense, and that's going to be a bit of a highlight issue for him during this fight. Lightweight obviously means for Barboza, it's an easier cut because he is getting up there in age, and as we know, sometimes for all the fighters, they can't get that extra pound off. So he might look like a whole brand new fighter this weekend. The typical striking stuff for Barboza is, as I said, leg kicks and body kicks and head kicks and all kinds of kicks. But he's also pretty dangerous in the clinch, and that's going to be a pretty gambly moment for Klose, because obviously, in order for Klose to get into the whole wrestling stuff, he needs to be in the clinch, right, or any position near the clinch. So I do think that regardless of where Barboza is on the cage or on the feet or whatever, he is going to be dealing damage against Klose, and damage is the #1 scoring criteria and yada yada. When it comes to Barboza's takedown defense, though, it's only really good until he faces someone who has a multiple discipline kind of style, which Klose does have. I mean, he is both a wrestler and a decent boxer, so it's possible for Barboza to kind of be overwhelmed by what Klose has to offer. And one thing that I do see Barboza struggling with in particular is the flashing jabs of Klose, because obviously when you, well, not when you, as in you, the viewer, or you, Dom, Will, or Finz, when you jab someone, they only see a fist for the most part, right? They kind of blink reaction and all that stuff like that, and that's going to open up an opportunity for Klose to get the takedown. And you know, it's just so hard for Barboza to defend 2 things at once, and I just feel like Klose is going to be the perfect opponent to kind of spoil the party a little bit. That pretty much covers my whole Klose argument as well. So in terms of my pick, I got Barboza, only because I trust him a bit more than I do Klose, which is why it's a very low pick. What about any of you guys?
Yeah, floor is open, guys. Any strong leans on this one?
Yeah, I have no idea how to handicap this one. It's the battle of the unks. Barboza is usually good because he's super quick, but you know, with his age, he's no longer super quick. Just looking at the stats really quick, I mean, they also throw with the same exact volume. I mean, I don't think Barboza is going to be out there, you know, out voluming Klose on the feet. He might be throwing a lot more leg kicks. That could be a thing. But also, didn't Klose just lose by a knee to Joel Alvarez by shooting for a lazy takedown? Like, someone can cut me off. Am I remembering that correctly? Did that not just happen?
Yep, it happened.
Yeah. And Barboza did that to Billy Q as well. So, like, I don't know if 1 + 1 is going to equal 2 here. Barboza by like up the middle knee. But yeah, that's how I kind of have it. I kind of lean Barboza just for that reason, because I think Klose's takedowns aren't going to be super successful.
Yeah, I mean, Barboza's getting taken down a lot. That's the problem. I mean, he's getting taken down by featherweights as well. You know, Lerone Murphy took him down 4 times. He's been taken down by Ige, by Kevin Lee multiple times. So I just can't remember much about Drakkar Klose. He's one of these very forgettable fighters. I mean, you look at him on the screen, he looks like, you know, just Joe Blogs, right? Look at Barboza. Look at his ripped physique. I think the thing that's misleading is Barboza's been through so much in his career. Like he's got, I don't know how many UFC fights. There's so many wars and so many miles on the clock. I just think that if I was going to bet this fight, I'd have to bet Klose and just assume that Klose was going to get him down and wear him out, being the bigger man. Which I assume he's bigger because he seems to be at a height and reach disadvantage. But you know, he's the one who's been fighting at lightweight, and Barboza's been at featherweight for at least, you know, for a good stint. I don't know how many fights, 5 or 6, maybe more. Will, what's your opinion on this one?
It's just two guys aggressively waving red flags at each other, isn't it? Really, they're both getting up there in age. I think age is an interesting one because there's a difference, you know, like they're both similar in like literal ages, but fight years is a different thing. Edson Barboza has faced so many dudes and had some fights where he's been absolutely mauled. Khabib one was particularly bad, if I remember correctly. And I do think that Barboza is probably more like going to wear that age than someone like Drakkar Klose is, because Drakkar Klose's career has been a lot less extreme. We all remember him getting finished by Beneil Dariush in pretty dramatic fashion. Obviously, there was that knee loss, as Finz mentioned. But other than that, the most damage Drakkar Klose has ever taken was in a face-off with Jeremy Stephens. Jeremy Stephens shoved him like for the hype of the fight and gave Drakkar Klose whiplash, and I think he was like sidelined for like a year, if I remember correctly. That was a long time ago. But yeah, I do agree with you in a way that like there is wrestling upside here for Drakkar Klose. Like the blueprint has been written on Barboza. Pressure and wrestling is how you beat him, because he's such an explosive guy. He still is quite an explosive guy despite being older, and he has, you know, that a lot of kicks, a lot of like very dangerous kicks. I mean, I think he hit Sadiq Yusuf with one that was very reminiscent of that Terry Etim KO from a long time ago. So you gotta crowd him, really. You gotta make sure he doesn't have that kicking range. But at the same time, in doing so, you have the potential to get hit like Billy Quarantillo did, like Beneil Dariush did. You get too close, those knees up the middle are, you know, pretty lethal, as we've alluded to already. So I think it's a tricky fight, because I think it's one of those ones that minute by minute Drakkar Klose will be winning or looking slightly better until suddenly he might not be. And it's just volatile. Like I said, it's two guys waving red flags at each other. So I don't really know which side to go with. I guess Drakkar Klose is the underdog, so that's probably the side I would lean on. But yeah, no enthusiasm to get involved in this one, really, to be honest.
Any final closing comments, Josh?
No, none.
Okay, let's do the bets.
All righty. Yeah, I mean, I'll go right off the bat. I've maxed bet MVP. I'm convinced that the price is way too generous here, and I really think the money line will move soon. Like, if it's not minus 200 by Thursday, I'll be very surprised. I think it could go off for like minus 250, because I think that's probably where it should be. So yeah, I just thought let's get aggressive, and MVP 5 units. Carlos Prates, I've got 2 units on him. It's the second leg of a parlay that's at like minus 112. So looking forward to that one. I think he's just more intense than Jeff Neal at this stage in their careers. And I think whether it's finding a finish or just having that kind of damage-based dominance, I expect Prates to just march down Jeff Neal. He'll have to be careful, but I just think he just looks superior. It's a very basic kind of assessment. I've already gone to bat for GM3. Two units at plus 230, and also Jessica Andrade. This is a bit of a rogue choice. I think that there's a big narrative on Andrade being an awful grappler, and you know we obviously saw that against Jazzy Vicious, but all of the highlights of her being out grappled and being ragdolled are mostly at 125 pounds or against women who are elite grapplers for the division for women's MMA, or women who are just much bigger than her. So that list is basically Tatiana Suarez, Jazzy Vicious, Valentina Shevchenko, and Erin Blanchfield. Luby Godinez is, in my opinion, none of those things. She's a strawweight. She's the same size as Andrade, and she's got good wrestling, but not very good top control. So I don't think that it's as clear cut as the knee-jerk reaction breakdown would tell you. And I think that the public have seen that as well. I bet Andrade when she was just under plus 200. I think now she's floating around at like plus 130, plus 140. So money's come in on her. I think she's back at the weight class that she was a champion at. You know, like I know she's definitely getting long in the tooth, and she's probably not got many fights left. But I'm just hoping she can like roll it back and show us who she used to be. Finally, Bobby Green. This one is a bit of a weird choice. I don't think people can really tell me why Carlos Diego Ferreira is going to win without leaning very heavily on why Bobby Green is quote unquote washed. And I get it. I agree with you. Bobby Green is definitely on a pretty sharp decline, but I think that it's a little bit overinflated. And I think that Carlos Diego Ferreira has benefited from 2 wins recently where his opponents have been looking great until suddenly they've just capitulated and self-destructed. We know that Michael Johnson does that all the time. And Rebetsky, who obviously is a friend of the show after that loss to Chris Duncan. Rebetsky is somebody who has cardio issues. So I just feel like everyone's a little bit too high on Carlos Diego Ferreira himself. And I think people are being a bit too low on Bobby Green. So I'm taking a chance for 1 unit on him there. I think there's a bit of value, but, you know, we'll see. I'm kind of happy to lose that one. I think it's a risky spot. But yeah, that's my slate.
Yeah, I think you'll find it's King Green now, and that's probably one of the reasons not to bet on him. The guy has some weird personality deficit. He seems to be always, up to some antics, pre-fight, post-fight, in the middle of the fight. I think there was a clip in the the Dustin Poirier highlights where he was chatting to Dustin in the cage before he got slept. But yeah, enough said about that. I don't think there's a lot to say on the Ferreira side, but I'm not into that fight, so to speak. I'm very much backing DDP here. He's the underdog. He's currently plus 175. It looks like a lot of money is coming in on Khamzat Chimaev. I kind of wish I just waited. I predicted incorrectly the line movement here. I was mainly taking DDP earlier when he was like plus 170, but I think if he keeps going, if he hits any higher number, I think it's just great value. I mean, whether you like DDP or don't, I mean, you put 100 down, you're going to get 300 back. I mean, it's like, and I just dispute the fact that it's not going to be a close fight unless it's an early finish. If it's an early finish, fine, I'll take my hat off to Khamzat, that he deserves to be the middleweight champion of the world. But if he doesn't finish early, I just think it's going to be really close, and that's you're going to be wanting to hold the 2-1 underdog ticket in that situation. So yeah, for me, it's a max bet. I've already talked about Murphy. I think he's the side. I think he should be the favorite. I think there's clear value there. It wouldn't surprise me greatly if he lost, but I think it's great value. So I'm going to go pretty heavy on Murphy. Closer, I think he's the side. I think from a betting perspective, if it gets much higher, and I expect it will because people like to bet Barboza, I'm definitely going to maybe sprinkle this half unit or 1 unit. The other 2 are just props that I was just thinking about. I think the Ruzboev battle is going to be end in violence. So it might be a good parlay piece. Just thinking about that. I think Jeff Neal, people are sleeping on him. I think he's very durable. He hits really hard. Pratchez is great. He's a great fighter. I think if he's going to win, probably by decision. I don't know if he'll get Neal out. If he's going to get him out of there, it's probably going to be late. So I'm not sure whether I'll get to this bet. It's just an initial lean. I'm going to hand over to Josh.
Yeah, short and diabetic for me, as always. DDP moneyline 2 units, because, I mean, obviously I'm going to pick DDP. The value's there, as Dom said. And for the sake of our podcast and all that stuff, I'm picking all of our picks just in the parlay for 1 unit, and onwards to Finz.
So yeah, I have Khamzat Chimaev. I am against everyone on this podcast / show. I apologize. So if you guys all win, that means I'm probably negative on the card. So that'll be a funny look. And if I win, that means you guys are all negative on the card. So I feel like that'll also be a funny look. There's no in between. Also, as some insurance policies, I have Diani Barboza. We didn't discuss that fight, Diani Barboza versus Karine Silva, but they did fight in the past. Diani Barboza won by decision. I think she's going to have the athleticism advantage. She's a former Olympic athlete. I think she's going to have the striking advantage. She flexed it against Diani Belbita. And Karine Silva, I think, is she's just going to pull guard. Not going to be a good look. Her takedowns are not going to work, I don't think. So, yeah, Lerone Murphy, I also agree with, I think, everyone. Maybe other than Slayer. I don't know. He seems 50-50 on that one, but everyone else seemed kind of confident. I'm taking Lerone Murphy for 2 units as well. And then I agree with Michael Venom Page. I think he should win. I'm parlaying him with Diego Ferreira, so I am going against Swipe on that one. I think yeah, I tend to fall into the sheep argument that he was talking about. I do think King Green is washed at this point. I think he's a volume merchant with good durability, but now the durability is kind of gone. I don't know if he can survive 3 rounds with the guy like Ferrer, who can also shoot takedowns as well. So yeah.
And that's all of our bets. There's only one final segment before we wrap up the episode, and that's the $100 challenge. We don't have anything lined up for this week, but as always, we'll post something in the YouTube comments when we get around to agreeing. Last week we had the over 3.5 rounds in the main event, which was extremely lucky to hit because at many times in the fight we thought Hernandez was going to finish much earlier. So we start with $100. We're on 270 right now, and we'll keep onwards and upwards. The last thing to do is for us to thank our guest, Finz, for coming on to the show. Finz, we're going to give you a second to just plug your channel, and we'll put all of the details of Finz's channel and his socials in the comments below the video. So, Finz, over to you. Final words.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate being on the show. I always love talking MMA, talking UFC with anyone that's willing to listen and also talk back. So yeah, I appreciate the invite, and I think this card's going to be epic. I think it's going to be a banger. I think it's going to be cinema. I'm going to be there in attendance. It's going to be quite amazing. But yeah, I have a YouTube channel. You know, I make weekly picks, weekly bets. You know, same thing like this. And I occasionally post some other type videos that have to do with the UFC. And then I also post on X/Twitter like all the time, and Instagram. So yeah, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
And that brings us to the end of episode 15. As always, we'll be back next week with another breakdown. We appreciate all the support. Thanks everyone for listening.